April 30th, 1944. The island-hopping campaign to the Pacific Theater raged on. Navy Lieutenant John A. Burns, piloting a Vought Kingfisher floatplane from Battleship North Carolina, approached the perilous waters of Truk Lagoon, where American and Japanese troops were still fighting each other. In a daring display of bravery and skill, Burns executed a mission that would become legendary. He landed in the middle of the maelstrom of fire and began rescuing every American pilot he saw stranded in the ocean. One after another, Burns picked up men as his Kingfisher navigated through the destroyed remains of the American fighters. Suddenly, he had 5 men aboard, some above the wings, others below, grabbing the landing gear with relief. Enemy rounds were still flying around him, but Burns did not flinch. There were more men to be saved. That was his job. As he taxied around the warzone, Burns retrieved 5 more men. The Kingfisher, now overloaded with 10 new passengers, could not fly. Instead, Burns traversed the harsh waters to link up with the submarine USS Tang, where he delivered his precious cargo. The exhausted, brave pilot, with his battered Kingfisher armed with 2 Browning machine guns, prepared to take to the skies again in search of more fellow airmen stranded in the ocean. Kingfisher pilots saved men, and there were surely more of them down there in the lagoon. Burns was their only salvation. The lineage of Sikorsky's Kingfisher and the U.S. Navy's floatplanes can be traced back to the early 1920s, when aircraft catapults became mandatory on all American warships, with no exceptions. The reason behind this decision was simple. U.S. Navy personnel had developed a new game-changing tactic. Using aircraft to spot targets drastically sharpened the aim of battleship guns at distances over 10 miles, boosting hit accuracy by an astonishing 200%. Such a revelation swiftly reshaped naval warfare, prompting the Navy to retrofit all 18 battleships with catapults, capable of launching observation aircraft equipped with floats. Simultaneously, floatplanes began gracing the decks of Navy cruisers, serving mainly as eyes in the sky that scouted distant threats rather than directing artillery. Initially, both battleships and cruisers shared the same types of 2-seater floatplanes, like the Vought UOs and O2Us. As the 1930s dawned and the Navy introduced hangar-ready heavy cruisers, the requirements for floatplanes evolved. The Navy Bureau of Aeronautics then tailored distinct specifications: Observation Scout Aircraft, or OS, for battleships, and a new breed of floatplanes, Scout Observation Aircraft, or SO, for cruisers. Thus, following the adoption of the Curtiss SOC-1 Seagull in 1935, the Navy came up with another requirement to equip the rest of the fleet, calling for the development of a 2-seat aircraft with either floats or wheels, a weight of around 5,000 pounds, a range of 1,000 miles, a wingspan with a limit of 36 feet, and the ability to be launched from a Navy catapult at a speed of 60 miles per hour. Overall, the design had to be compact, to be stored on hangars with limited space, catapult launch ready, water landing capable, and feature good cockpit visibility for the pilot to direct naval gunfire with precision as part of its artillery spotting role. Secondary roles comprised reconnaissance to conduct long-range operations and search and rescue missions to rescue sailors at sea. In 1936, the Naval Bureau of Aeronautics awarded the Chance Vought Division of United Aircraft a contract to build a single biplane prototype. One of Vaught's primary challenges was designing an aircraft that could meet the weight specifications for shipboard storage and catapult launch, while still carrying sufficient fuel and equipment for extended missions at sea. Nonetheless, work on the design progressed, and by the end of 1936, it was ready for testing. Vought tested the waters with the XOSU-1 prototype, an updated version of the O3U-3 featuring new flaps for heavier takeoffs. Despite its innovations, it did not significantly outperform its predecessors, leading to a quick dismissal after trials in Maryland. Not long after, the company introduced the XOSN-1, a pioneering aluminum skin biplane equipped with advanced automatic slats and a streamlined strut system. While it boasted a 40% improvement in range, its overall performance did not quite surpass the SOC-1 Seagull, despite sharing the same engine. Realizing the need for a more promising design, the Navy commissioned a new prototype in 1937, Vaught's monoplane XOS-2U-1. Led by designer Rex Beisel, the Vought team developed a state-of-the-art floatplane design that saved valuable weight and fuel consumption, and was powered by a 450-horsepower Pratt & Whitney R985 Wasp Jr. engine. Beisel's innovative concept outperformed competitors in every flight category, including speed, ceiling, and range, despite having 30% less wing area 22% less horsepower, and 15% less gross weight, maintaining a comparable takeoff speed of 55.6 miles per hour. The success behind Basil's design was its innovative broad chord wing design, featuring extensive full-span trailing-edge flaps that enhance slow flight capabilities, complemented by spoilers on the upper wing surfaces for improved roll control. Additionally, Vought's design became the first American military aircraft to incorporate spot welding for its primary airframe components. This new structural technique would become essential to Basil's V-166B project, leading to the iconic XF-4U-1 Corsair prototype. During trials, the XOS-2U-1 underwent minimal structural modifications, including adding a third strut to the main float's afterbody and a subtle step enhancement to the wingtip floats, optimizing its aerodynamic profile and float stability. In May 1939, Vought was finally awarded a design contract, beginning with an order of 54 airframes. The innovative design, with its unique amphibious capabilities, was adequately dubbed the Kingfisher by the sailors. Between 1939 and 1942, over 1,500 Kingfishers were manufactured, making the Kingfisher a cornerstone of naval aviation. The most produced variant was the OS-2U-3, with Vought building over 1,000 units and an additional 300 crafted by the Naval Aircraft Factory under the designation OS-2N. This production strategy allowed Vought to shift its focus toward ramping up production of the critically needed F-4U Corsair. While most Kingfishers serve with the U.S. Navy, around 100 would be delivered to the British Royal Navy, with over a dozen of these innovative fighters making their way to the frozen waters of the Soviet Union. The Kingfisher remained the cornerstone of Navy vessels well into the later stages of World War II, only beginning to be phased out in favor of the Curtiss SC Seahawk in late 1944. Throughout its service, the Kingfisher spawned several variants, with some essential and minor modifications. The OS-2U-1, the initial production model, was equipped with a 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R9854 engine. It comprised a primary armament of two 30 caliber machine guns and had provisions for carrying bombs or depth charges. For instance, machine guns could be employed for strafing runs against enemy positions in the mainland, hostile patrol boats protecting a specific area, or even machine gun crews from warships. An improved version was the OS-2U-2, featuring minor modifications, including an upgraded Pratt & Whitney R98548 engine and enhanced radio equipment. The OS-2U-3 variant included a self-sealing fuel tank, armor protection for the crew, and an improved 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R985AN2 engine. It was better suited for combat, with increased payload capacity. This variant could carry two 100-pound bombs or two 325-pound depth charges. The bombs carried could be used to deal maximum damage against enemy ground emplacements or even smaller warships lacking substantial anti-aircraft guns. Furthermore, the depth charges were more specialized for anti-submarine operations, as these underwater vessels were spotted near the Kingfisher's home ship. There was also a version of the OS-2U-3 built by the Naval Aircraft Factory under the designation OS-2N1. It was essentially similar to the OS-2U-3, but was produced to help Vought meet the high demands for the aircraft without disrupting production of the Corsair. Lastly, there was the Kingfisher Mark I, the British designation for the American aircraft. It featured different radio sets and sometimes different armament configurations. The Kingfisher's main cabin seated two crew members, the pilot and an observer, both of whom had excellent visibility due to the large canopy that covered their station. This was crucial for its central role in observing enemy positions, spotting artillery, and conducting search and rescue missions. Overall, the Kingfisher had a length of 33 feet, a wingspan of 35 feet, and a height of 14.8 feet. The Kingfisher, with its limited combat load, had a maximum takeoff weight of 6,000 pounds. Its engine allowed it to reach a maximum speed of 171 miles per hour, achieving a cruise speed of 152 miles per hour and a service ceiling of over 18,000 feet, with an approximate range of 908 miles. Once the Kingfishers were launched from their warships, they immediately headed towards their objective, maintaining optimal positioning for accurate observation while staying vigilant for enemy aircraft. In the spacious cockpit, the observer focused on the target, relaying critical adjustments to the ship via radio before the warship opened fire with its powerful main guns. The Kingfisher, armed with its 30 caliber machine gun in the nose and a flexible mounted 30 caliber in the rear, allowed 2 Kingfishers to shoot down Japanese Zeros over Iwo Jima in 1945. Nonetheless, typically the Kingfisher relied on accompanying fighter aircraft for protection. During combat operations, crews flew a precise triangular course from the ship, expanding the search area and relaying observations. The Kingfishers operated in coordinated squadrons, with multiple Kingfishers from different ships covering broad sections of the ocean, serving as the fleet's eyes in the sky and enhancing the task force's surveillance capabilities and range to detect enemies before they were spotted first. Once the mission was done, the Kingfisher returned to its ship and was recovered with a spring-loaded hook attached to the ship's crane. Still, the Kingfishers were also equipped with fixed-wheel landing gear to operate from shore bases as part of patrol anti-submarine operations. Besides serving as a reconnaissance, spotting, and submarine hunting aircraft, the Kingfisher was most notably known for rescuing aircrew shot down by the Japanese over the vast and perilous waters of the Pacific. According to data gathered by the U.S. Navy, the Kingfisher saved more downed flyers during World War II than any other aircraft of the time, except for the legendary PBY-5 Catalina. The most notable ordeal of them all was rescuing Eddie Rickenbacker, the ace of aces, who shot over 26 enemy aircraft in World War I, earning him a Distinguished Service Cross and the Medal of Honor. Decades after his exploits, the legendary ace and his companions aboard a B-17D Flying Fortress were bound for the remote Phoenix Islands with a top-secret mission to deliver a personal message to General Douglas MacArthur. Suddenly, they found themselves grievously off course. After exhausting their fuel, they ditched into the merciless sea, clinging to life in 3 emergency rafts. Their troubles seemed hopeless as days became agonizing weeks without food or water. Yet fate intervened when Lieutenant William F. Eady and his radio man, L.H. Boot, flying the latest variant of the Kingfisher, spotted the survivors while on a routine patrol. Eady and his co-pilot managed to secure the sickest of the men into the rear aircraft's gunner's seat and ingeniously strapped Rickenbacker and another to the wings. Unable to take off with such a heavy load of survivors, Eady taxied through the waters toward Funafuti Island. Their salvation came when a Navy patrol torpedo boat rendezvoused with them, ensuring the rescue of the remaining men. The Kingfisher, as it had done many times before, saved the day again, highlighting its role as the most valuable rescue asset of the U.S. Navy. On April 30th, 1944, during a daring carrier raid against the fortified Japanese base at Truk. In the aftermath of the attack, the surrounding and turbulent waters were filled with the metallic remains of destroyed American aircraft. While the enemy presence remained in Truk, 2 Kingfishers were dispatched to save a downed carrier pilot. The first Kingfisher faced the enemy and tried to avoid its fire, but met a grim fate when it was damaged upon landing, beginning to sink as it tried to retrieve the pilot from the ocean. In a race against time, the second Kingfisher, piloted by Lieutenant John Burns, swooped in to execute a daring landing. Burns not only retrieved the 3 stranded aviators, but also faced the daunting task of taxiing to safety with the added weight, making takeoff impossible. His destination was the nearby submarine USS Tang, a submarine positioned outside the lagoon. During this tense journey, Burns' Kingfisher brought hope for 2 additional TBM Avengers crews who had ditched into the sea nearby, increasing the number aboard to 10 souls clinging to life on the aircraft's wings. Burns taxied toward USS Tang, and with his Kingfisher already damaged from the added weight of the survivors it carried across the ocean, he was forced to leave his trusty aircraft behind. As a result of their life-saving task, Lieutenant Burns was awarded the Navy Cross for his extraordinary bravery and unwavering determination. Following this daring rescue operation, Kingfishers began to be replaced by single-seat Curtiss SC-1 Seahawks, the Navy's new floatplane scout. Nonetheless, some remained in service until the very end of the war in the Pacific. By 1946, all the Kingfishers were removed from service, leaving behind a legacy marked by technical excellence and heroism. Engineered for resilience and versatility, the Kingfisher excelled in spotting enemy objectives for Navy warships, rescuing stranded airmen, guiding devastating naval artillery, and conducting daring reconnaissance operations ahead of the fleet.